Hello, I'm Mario Toneguzzi, managing editor of Canada's podcast. Joining me today on Calgary's podcast is Faisal Karmali, who is an author, talk show host, business analyst, financial advisor based in Calgary. Have I missed anything, Faisal?
Yeah, I think you pretty much covered it. Yeah.
Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Well, let's talk first of all, before we get into some of the sort of the media stuff you do. Tell us a little bit about your financial background and what do you do in that area?
Yeah, so my business partner and I, Dave Popwich, we started a practice called the Popwich Karmali Advisory Group. We merged our individual practices about 15 years ago, and we decided to focus on two major categories, or two different groups. Our key pro practice is working with people who are transitioning to or living in retirement. We also help work with entrepreneurs who are building their wealth and getting ready for retirement within 10 years or less than 10 years or already in retirement. That's the most vulnerable stage in a person's financial life when they're
Yeah.
basically going to be living off their savings, and they're going to be able to work around their lifestyle based on that versus a paycheck or business income or whatever it may be. So most vulnerable time in the state in their stage of life. So we wanted to build an entire practice where we can add value, give support, advice, and proper money management around that. And that's what we built about 15 years ago.
So I'm just curious of yourself personally, like how did you get into this and why? Like I can imagine growing up as a kid, you probably weren't thinking I want to be a financial advisor when I grow up.
Yeah, well, Mario, what was interesting is when I was 16 years old, an individual gave me an opportunity to work on a summertime job at a financial advisor's place where I was basically calling people to book appointments for the advisor. That was my job. The gentleman left the door opened about, I'd say, a crack where I could even hear the conversation. And that's where I got inspired. That's where I'm like, well, this gentleman is actually helping this family with their finances. They're talking about money, talking about how much money they can make and how they're going to grow and reach their goals, and he gets paid for it. That sounds pretty cool. I want to do that. And literally, since I was 16, I was pretty much focused on I want to make sure I can help people. I can make sure that I can help them reach their goals, and if I can make them money and make myself money as well, well, that's the definition of happiness when I was 16.
Okay. Now, one of the things that you do beyond this, obviously, but connected, is media stuff. You're often, quoted in media, but you're also, looked upon as a financial expert, with certain different media venues. Can you talk a little bit about that and how did that start?
Yeah, about 16, 17 years ago, I was approached by Chorus Radio to be an expert on certain topics within the financial world. And then at that point, that's where Dave Popwich and I were also introduced to the station managers and the content team, and they needed a business analyst, someone to go over the business news in the local area, as well as what's happening throughout the world. And so we were actually on the radio about 17 years ago, and we've been doing that ever since. CTV came on board and Global came on board many years later. And so now we're also on those two era platforms as well. So we've covered TV and radio now as business analysts and business experts for those media outlets from a local level. And then we also give them the national, international flavor to it. So we've not only been able to work with clients, but also be able to help people understand the day-to-day news stories of what's happening.
How do you like doing that?
It's nerve-wracking still till today after so many years. And Mario, you were on one of our shows as well many years ago when you
Yeah.
were working with one of the publication companies out here. And so it helps us kind of communicate. It helps us stay on top of things, but it's nerve-wracking. I don't always like it so much, but I try to do as a best of a job as I can.
Okay. Now you've also kind of transitioned into doing a lot of podcasts and the Karmali Exchange. Can you talk a little bit about that? How'd that come about, and what do you do with the podcasts?
What I've noticed, I think, over the last 15, 16 years is that when I've had the opportunity to analyze and review and uh, discuss about major corporations around the world, I've had the opportunity to be on conference calls, speak with C-suite members, do some research with them, and learn how to pick portfolios or select investments for my clients. And these companies generally have five key areas. When I take it down to private, small, medium-sized corporations in this country, not all five pieces of a successful business are being applied. And I didn't think that these businesses actually had a place where they can learn those five, what I call the five Ps, on the success of a business. And so one of my passion is to help, of course, and to help business owners. And so I built an entire platform to help business owners on this and give them some feedback on how their businesses can grow. We have workshops, we have podcasts, we have interviews, we have conversations, and so it's pretty interesting. And those are the key things. I think a lot of our business owners in this country are very good at their craft. They're not always as great with business itself. I think that those five Ps they need to work on are knowing how to handle their people, their product or service. They have to have passion or purpose behind what they do. They have to have a process in their business, and they know how to get paid. And if you put those five Ps, people, passion, product, process, and get paid, you've got a very good business. You can handle all five.
So over the years, who are maybe some of the most famous people you've done on your podcast?
Oh, there's been quite a few. I think I'll use the most impactful more than the most famous. I think
Sure.
that's where the key comes into play. So let's talk with the founder of UGG. When Brian Smith came on board, he has such a great story. He talked about how he actually was selling shoes out of his back of his van on the beach in California, all the way to how you'd see it as a multi-million-dollar company, how he lost his company, got it back, sold it. Those experiences of that journey is fantastic. When you look at some more of a national brand like Ashley Freeborn and what Smash and Tess has done, and how they built it from out of Vancouver, going to a national brand, having major artists wear her clothing is fantastic. And then you can see local brands in the Calgary area, for example. You've got service-based businesses such as more and her entire studio and how she's built her entire business. You've also got Joy Drop doing fantastic work and in the retail side of things. And these stories are not heard, but it's the learnings of what they need to do to make it better is where entrepreneurs come. So when I talk about impact, these are the ones that give them the biggest impact, I think, to the viewers and listeners of our show.
What have you learned in interviewing all these people? What have you learned in terms of key lessons for success of being an entrepreneur?
I think one of the key lessons I learned is there's no one way of doing it. We talk about in the investment world, you have to have a certain type of process or a certain type of metrics to reach what's called a pinnacle type of company. In the private sector, small, medium-sized corporations, it's not all done the same way. So that's the number one learning. You can become a successful business without being a conventional business.
Yeah.
Number two, not surprising, but confirmed my thesis. Most business owners don't know their financials. The ones that do very well are the ones who know their numbers. Many of them will say, I'll hire an accountant, I'll hire a financial person to take care of that. So they don't know their metrics. They don't know how to move the levers of the business. And so I think that was confirming my thesis about what individuals had. And how to actually connect with your customer base was probably the third one. When you look at what happened pre-pandemic, during the pandemic, you're looking at things that are happening now, your connection with your client. They're in so many different ways, and you always have to be in connection and have that interaction with your customer base. Because if you don't, your competition will take over, and that's what we've seen with a lot of businesses around the world.
It's funny you mentioned the connection with the client or your customer base, and how important that is. I was just thinking of the controversy we have right now with Bud Light and some of their marketing, and obviously they misread that situation. But which leads me to a question about success and failure. Like, how many of these companies have failures, right, along their journey and their process, but they've learned they don't give up, right? And that's one of the things I found in a lot of these businesses, right? Can you talk a little bit about the importance of I guess plowing through those challenges and plowing through those obstacles?
Yeah, when I had a chance to talk to like individuals like Shane Wenzel with Shane Holmes and so
Yeah,
forth, one thing that he mentioned to me is through his journey, he would see a failure as a failure because he was at a certain part of his journey. Further along his journey, he wouldn't look at it as a failure, but an opportunity. And now he looks at failure completely different than when he first started. And I think you can kind of tell where an individual is in their journey based on how they describe failure.
yeah,
To me, failure is a learning opportunity. It's not something that can hurt you or really impact you. You can make mistakes. You can have impact on those mistakes, but it's what you do with that going forward. And so that rebound, that bounce back, the plow throughing that you were talking about, it's all now come back to mindset. And there are a lot of people who are going to fail in their business. 80% of businesses
yeah.
fail in the first 5 years. And so there's a reason for that. That's why I want to help. But the other part of it is if you do fail,
Yeah.
how do you in any format, how do you jump back up and move forward?
Well, let's face it, it's not an easy time for anybody these days, right? And in terms of when it comes to the economy and finances, and as you mentioned, a lot of businesses fail. What does it take for an entrepreneur to overcome that? Like what do they need to have like a up here, I guess, and considering the times we're in now with costs, flying off the roof, in terms of everything that they're doing and issues with supply chains, all that type of stuff. What does it take to be a person of success in this environment?
Yeah, the one thing that I think all entrepreneurs that are successful have as part of their DNA is vision.
Mm.
They look through the bigger picture. They want to make sure that their vision is being accomplished, whatever that vision may be. So I think that's the first thing. If you give up on your vision, you're going to give up on your business.
Mm.
Number two, one thing I see common between entrepreneurs through the ups and downs is that they have an objective or a goal. They're almost so um, egotistical that they can't let things fail, that they push
Yeah,
through it and try to make it work. And there's a lot of insecurity and issues that we have as entrepreneurs that we want to make it be successful for whatever reason that may be. But those reasons are the driver. Now that could be because you got to take care of family. You want to make sure you've got, your name in lights, or whatever it may be. You've got the best way to help people. There's a reason or purpose behind why we do what we do. Whatever that purpose is, you're going to see entrepreneurs just be laser focused on that purpose and do what they have to do to get things done. And
yeah,
so all through all adversity, either a pandemic, labor shortages, inflation, tax increases, all the different things, supply chain, all the things that
yeah.
go on, you're going to have all these challenges. That vision and that tenacity to stay with it, because you have a purpose, is the most important driver. That's what get people through it. We innovate and we create because we have that tenacity.
So, you're based in Calgary. What about the environment here? Like, what do you see when it comes to the entrepreneurial spirit that everybody talks about Calgary? Is that a myth or is that reality?
I think Calgary is one of the most undervalued cities in this country. We have been pegged as a typical one industry type of a city, which is oil and gas, and they have reason to have that view. Um, what's not being discussed as much as I'd like to see is the opportunities in other areas. And most people will go right to the tech industry, but there's a whole bunch of life sciences companies, technology companies, agriculture corporation, manufacturing, fabrication. Like, we are diversified more now than we have ever been in history, and I don't think that's being mentioned. We're still an oil and gas town, according to many outside the city.
Yeah,
But if you actually go through the core of the areas in Calgary, you will see how great and how diverse this city is, not only by industry but by people, backgrounds, knowledge, and what they contribute to the city. So I
yeah.
think we're undervalued. I use hockey as an analogy. Think of your most undervalued hockey team. That's the Calgary.
That now, what about the underlying business conditions for here or for the rest of the province? How does that fuel, I guess, entrepreneurial spirit? There's a lot of talk about that. Obviously taxes are lower and all that type of stuff. Is that a driver of entrepreneurs here in the province?
And I'll say taxes is an incentive. It's not a driver, it's an
Yeah.
incentive. I can say that Alberta by nature has a different type of oomph. I've lived in three provinces in this country, and the atmosphere in this province of we can do this ourselves, we can make it happen, is a little bit different than it is in other provinces or even other states in the United States as well. And so we want to build on our own. We've had this mantra, this mindset, or this history in
Mm.
this province that it's us against the rest. And so we better make it work for us. And so that's kind of been a part of the culture of Alberta. And so that's why you see the entrepreneurs that you do. That being said, we find it the most challenging to go east to west in our business activities. It's easier to go north and south. It is easier for us to work down south than it is to work with our fellow provinces across the country for multiple reasons, government reasons, bureaucracy, politics, whatever it may be. But I think Albertans have figured out that, we're going to break these border barriers going east and west. We're going to break these borders going north and south so we can open the lines of business more. And I see that more and more happening in this province.
Okay, a little bit of a strange question, but I'm just curious. Of the entrepreneurs that you've interviewed for your podcast, male, female, any differences that you've noticed between a male and a female entrepreneur?
I don't want to generalize on any one gender based on that, but what I can say is that all of them are driven to reach a goal. Now, their goals might be different. I have not seen as many entrepreneurs focused on end result being money.
Mm.
And I think that's a very interesting piece. The ones who are chasing the money, you can see it, you can hear it in their tone, and I think that's a big one. When you look at the ones who are focused on their purpose or what they want to deliver, they know the money will follow at some point. And so when I talk about individuals like Jane Lofgren or Amanda Ovesi and these individuals, these ladies have done a great job. You'll never hear them say it's about the money. And then you talk to individuals like Shane Wenzel or members from Litco Law and so forth. They're not talking about money. They're talking about a service or a product that can make a
Mm.
difference to people in their lives. So I think that's the common bond. The differences I would say is how they approach it from a nurturing perspective, from an ongoing active perspective. I think that's where the differences lie. That's why I think diversity is good. But I don't think it's a gender based. I think they're all focused on the outcome, not the money.
Okay, now, so what you've said right there kind of tweaked in something in my head. Like a lot of the companies focus on the end goal and not so much the making the money, but building a company in order to sell it. Okay. You know what I mean? And then there's a lot of companies that do that. What's your thoughts on that? As opposed, is that where you lose the focus of, as you're talking about the purpose and the mission of what your company is?
I think the purpose can be the ability to build and to build something in order to sell it. That could be your
Yeah.
your future from a financial perspective, or because that's what
Yeah.
you want to do. Uh, Rarely do I see entrepreneurs stay with the same business forever,
Mm.
right? I would label them as business owners
Yeah.
at some point, not entrepreneurs. Most entrepreneurs um, have got this uh, attention deficit to stay in one focus, and they want to go into other areas as well. And I'll look at myself. I can talk about my financial practice, but even within that financial practice, we've got other ways of doing things that are not conventional. And so we're not going to stay with the same old, same old. So I think that there's a change there. I think business owners or individuals who set up a business in order for it to be sold have a different purpose or outcome they're trying to achieve. Not saying they can't give a good product or service or anything like that, but I think the people who buy them and want to have a different add value to
Yeah.
to society. see a bigger bang for their buck because it's already been set up to be sold. I think there's opportunity there.
All right. So, Faisal, you do a lot of stuff. You're a very busy man. Where do you find the work-life balance in your life?
Yeah, I don't really like the conversation of work and life being an opposite two ends, and you have to balance it out
Yeah.
like you're on a scale or a seesaw. I honestly think it's part of your life. I'm here, literally. I'll be going spending some time with my family very shortly, and so it's part of my life. So I'm not a big fan of this whole concept of work versus life. So there's no such thing as balance. It's all of life. It's just who I am. I've never seen people who have a part of their life have a problem balancing. Sure, there are times you want to spend more time in one thing versus another. Sure, I'd like to spend more time with my family than I can right now, but I have a purpose as well. My businesses are like my children as well. They need nurturing. They're all at different stages of their journey in their course. My actual biological children are all at different stages of their life. So I think they're all like different parts of me. And so I don't think there's such thing as a work-life balance. I think it's just life.
All right. Wonderful. Thank you, Faisal, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
All right, that was our guest on Calgary's podcast, Faisal Karmali, who is an author, talk show host, financial advisor, and business analyst based in Calgary. I'm Mario Toneguzzi, managing editor of Canada's podcast. Thanks for joining us today.